Good morning and welcome to each and every one of you to this week's assembly being delivered by me, Miss Deady. As you can see from the screen, the theme of this week's assembly is an opportunity for us to think about finding our voice. Now, I'm sure that you will agree that not only as individuals, but certainly as a nation, as a country, and certainly globally, we have been through an incredibly challenging time. And if you think back to the assembly Mr. Anderson delivered on your first day when you returned to school, he talked about the impact of lockdown and school closure and how each and every one of us will have had a different experience. So now that we return to school, I think is a good opportunity for us to think about finding our voice and sharing our voice with each other. And it's important for us to think about being heard, but it's also important for us to think about what we say in order to be noticed and respected by others. Firstly, it's important to be you. Now, I know that's a very obvious point, but it's important to be authentic. Don't always follow the crowd in terms of what you say. It's also important to be honest and again, to have that integrity to you. But in terms of that honesty, it's also important to be kind to others around us because we've all been through an incredibly difficult time and we know that words have power and have the potential to have a damaging effect on other people. So it's important that we are really careful with our choices of language and how we communicate with each other. It's important for us to be informed, not just about the scenario that we've been contending with, but it's our responsibility to keep abreast of the news around us. Now, we are really fortunate that we live in a society where we have freedom of speech. So it's really good that we have an opportunity to share our quite strong opinions at times and strong views. But it's important that if we are sharing strong opinions and views, that they come from a place of being informed. Now, we all consume news from various different platforms these days. So it's always important to fact check your news because there's potential for lots of news stories to use a term that we commonly use now, to be fake. Now, I'm not going to say very much about the image in front of you now. It's a global story. I'm sure many of you are aware of it, but I thought it was a good example of the power of language and the impact of language and what it said and how that can have an impact on other people. And that's why I wanted to share it in today's assembly. Now, your particular generation, one of the ways you enjoy and you like your voice to be heard is through social media. So it's really important that we really think about what we post on social media. Before we post anything, we need to remember that once it's there, it's out there forever. So we really do need to think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And most importantly, is it kind? So I've always firmly believed you need to treat others the way you wish to be treated yourself. And this includes what you say or communicate through social media. And it's important to remember, isn't it, that anything unpleasant or unhelpful that we post or we say, as well as causing harm or damage to other people or groups of people, it can actually be damaging to ourselves. So something you perhaps post as a young person that you think will not have an impact at any point later in life could actually come back to bite you because you could, for example, have a future employer searching through historical posts, anything you've put out there on social media, and it could present you in a negative light, and it could not be a true reflection of the person you are. So you really, really do need to think. And it's also, I'm really encouraged that what we have now on many social media platforms is the opportunity to know that something's been fact checked and it may be disputed for its accuracy. And that's really important for us to note that because what we don't want to be doing is sharing any news stories if in fact they contain any inaccuracies. And just a reminder that the term fake news, a term coined by ex-president of the United States, Donald Trump, he really did bring this into our thinking, didn't he? And was often talking about fake news. But whoever has said it, what is important for us to know is if we are sharing anything, we need to ensure that it is accurate, because there's potential for harm if we share something and it isn't true. And that could be a big national story, or it could be between a group of friends who are sharing something as well. Now, another way that we can find our voice, we can find our voice in lots of different ways and lots of different and interesting ways. But one way that we could find our voice, and it could be helpful to other people, is perhaps involving ourselves in a charity event, such as Red Nose Day. Now, as I'm sure you know, Red Nose Day was held on Friday of last week, the 19th of March. So I just wonder, did you watch the event this year? Did you get involved in any way? And actually getting involved in a charity is a great way of finding your voice. And it can be something that perhaps feels quite minor, such as purchasing and sporting your red nose. And it could be something much bigger, such as throwing yourself into fundraising in a big way, or involving yourself in some other aspect of charity work. So charity work can be a great way of finding your voice. Not only will it be helpful to other people, but it can really help you in terms of giving you that feel-good factor for doing good for other people or for the wider society. It's also really important to have different interests. For me, it's quite straightforward that if you have different interests, you will be a more interesting person, and surely that's going to impact on you having a more interesting voice and story to share. Now, I know that lots of that will have been scuppered in lockdown, but as we ease ourselves out of lockdown, hopefully we'll be able to return to some of the things that we previously enjoyed, perhaps sporting clubs that we attended as an example, or maybe think about taking up new interests. So I've just shared with you on the screen a couple of things that are personal interest to me. So I can't wait for the opportunity to return to the beach to have some beautiful walks with my dogs. And as you can see from the bigger image on the screen, in the summer, I'm going to be undertaking a 26-mile hike in the beautiful Gower Peninsula. I know it's going to be incredibly challenging, but it's good to challenge ourselves as well, isn't it? And I'm about to embark on some serious training and watch this space, but I'm hoping that it will be a really positive event. You can see from the screen as well that during lockdown, not sure if it was interesting, but I did take the opportunity to get on with lots of DIY that I needed to do around the house. So though maybe it wasn't particularly interesting, it has given me that sense of achievement, because I was able to get stuck into something that perhaps ordinarily I wouldn't have had the time to do. So having a range of different interests will certainly make you a more interesting person with a more interesting voice and a more interesting story to share. Now, it's important that in terms of being noticed by others and being respected by others in terms of what we say, we need to be articulate. Now, this was a slide that I developed a year ago in an assembly. And for obvious reasons, we've been through a period of lockdown, and some of the things that we wanted to work on as a school have had to pause. But we're now at a point where we will be able to start opening up those opportunities to you again. Now, there'll be lots of opportunities for you to develop your oracy in school that will help you to be a more articulate person. So you really need to take ownership of that as well. So when you're in class, if your teacher asks you a question, think about giving a really good developed answer. Think about speaking in full sentences. Think about taking those opportunities for using more ambitious vocabulary. Think about upskilling your language whenever you have the opportunity to do so. And by doing all of these things, that will help you to go some way to really developing your skill in terms of being an articulate speaker. Now, another way to ensure that you continue to develop yourself and you're able to be articulate is simply to read. Now, there are lots and lots of opportunities in school to develop yourself as a reader, and you need to take those opportunities. And there is a wealth of evidence out there that tells us that those students and those people that read will will have developed a more ambitious vocabulary. You're exposed to more tier 2 vocabulary, and therefore you'll be able to incorporate that into your own language, and your own use of language will become more ambitious. And that will certainly stand you in good stead throughout your life, and it will certainly get you noticed and respected by others if you are articulate in the way you speak. So finally, we've been through, as a global community, we've been through a very challenging time with the coronavirus pandemic. But that doesn't need to define us as a community, and I'm certain that we can bounce back stronger. Now, in terms of bouncing back, we need to ensure that we are able to have a positive mindset and a positive outlook on life. And if we have a positive mindset and a positive outlook on life, that will surely impact on us using language more positively and having a more positive voice and story to be heard. And that will ultimately help us to feel more positive about ourselves, and will certainly help us to develop and maintain, really good mental well-being, which is ultimately where all of us want to be. So in conclusion to today's assembly, this was an opportunity for us to think about, we've maybe been scuppered a little bit because we've all been working remotely at home, but now an opportunity to think about finding our voice and the ways in which we can do that. So in conclusion to today's assembly, we need to be authentic and honest in terms of the things that we say, but we also need to ensure that whatever we say, we need to ensure that we're kind, because words really do carry power, and we want them to carry power in a positive way. We need to ensure that we take every opportunity to be informed in what we say, whether that's when we're communicating with other people through what we say face to face, or whether we're communicating with people perhaps on a digital platform. We need to try and seek opportunities to take up different interests, and to make, and by taking up different interests or maintaining interests we already have, will hopefully make us a more interesting person with a more interesting voice and story to be shared. There'll be lots and lots of opportunities in school that we will share with you, so you have those opportunities to really think about being articulate, using tier 2 vocabulary, being ambitious in the things you say, not just in the spoken word, but through your written communication as well. And importantly, we need to think about ways of maintaining that positive voice and that positive mindset, which will contribute to our positive mental well-being. So thank you for taking the time to listen to today's assembly, and I hope that you have a really good week in school. Thank you.